Please listen carefully.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the third episode of the Study Space podcast created by the Uniplan team. My name is David.
And my name is Julian.
And we'll be serving as your host for today. Today, we'll be asking a question that can be pretty important to any college student. Is a college degree future-proof? But before we start, I have to ask, Julian, what's inspiring you today?
You know, what's inspiring me today involves you, David. What's inspiring me today is actually the Uniplan team. A lot of you may know that, or at least some of you may know that the app, our app, the Uniplan app, is going to be rolling out in beta testing soon, relatively soon. We're ramping up to that point. And the engineers have been hard at work. We're doing some really great work. I mean, it's slow going because we're redoing some parts that because we want to follow best practice. And we want to make sure that the architecture that we have in place is a secure and scalable and functional one. Like we're not super concerned about whether or not it works, because what we have right now is it works, but we want to have the best architecture in place for all of our users. So on that side, you know, we're doing some great work on there. And then you, David, you're also doing some amazing work with our content. And so I really appreciate the team that we have behind our media content and our app. So that's what's inspiring me today. What about you?
Yeah, so before I start about what's inspiring me today, I just want to comment that, yeah, we'll be rolling out beta testing very soon. We'll be releasing more details on how to get involved with that, how to beta test the app for bugs, and giving us feedback on how to improve the app. But what's inspiring me today is just college in general. I find it pretty hard to find one specific inspiration. But yeah, I just moved into college about 2 weeks ago now, and it's been very overwhelming a little bit, very packed, but everything has been really great so far. Met really good people, and college is just a very different environment, as you probably know, Julian, and as anyone who's been in college before. Much different than high school. So much more freedom, and it's definitely something very interesting.
Is it a good different or like a bad different?
I'd say overall it's a really good difference, because you're basically on your own now. You're very independent, and that teaches you both responsibility and also lets you have basically control over your own life. I mean, you don't have to go to class. You don't want to. You don't really have to join any clubs. You don't have to do anything. Your parents aren't going to be all over your back telling you what to do, especially since like I go to a school that's rather far away. So you're responsible for your own decisions now, and everything's in your hands, and that's a really good feeling for me personally, because I just like living in that manner. But yeah, college for me has been really fun, and it's something I'm looking forward to doing for the next 4 years, I guess. Okay, now let's start the podcast. So first we have to talk about what future-proof actually means. So obviously, a lot of people right now are in college, and college has become an ever-expanding, institution, because people are now seeking higher education so that they can get the jobs that they want that require a degree. And obviously, a lot of these jobs aren't going to be around in the future. So, for example, a job that has kind of been put out of place is factory working, because nowadays you see a lot of machines, a lot of robots that are taking over factory jobs. So obviously factory jobs are a thing kind of the past. And a lot of people are concerned that their college degree, whatever they major in, whatever degree they get so that they can pursue a certain career, will inevitably end up like factory jobs, and there will be no more demand for them. So that basically causes their degree to be, well, useless, essentially. And so having a future-proof degree, or making your degree future-proof rather, is essentially setting yourself up so that no matter what, you will always have a career and you'll be able to do what you love even years or decades after you go to college. So obviously, like I mentioned earlier, the advancement of technology has obviously created lots of automation, and it's also created lots of new jobs. So for example, YouTube is something that people now do full time. Some people play video games on YouTube. Some people, just talk about their daily lives. Some people vlog, and people are actually able to make really good salaries on this just through ad revenue, through sponsors, and other sources. Amazon dropshipping is also a very huge business right now because people have found ways to buy items and then resell them at a higher price so that they can get all the income that's basically in the middle. So obviously these new technologies have created many jobs, but obviously they've also taken away many jobs. So Julian, I just want to ask you right now, what is your opinion on these technologies and how do you think they have affected the outlook of college degrees overall?
I think, I'm somewhat biased because my background is in technology traditionally. And so I'm not particularly adverse to technology. I don't feel threatened by technology. I think technology is something that aims to help us, to augment our lives. And that might be, over optimistic, right? Like some people feel like computers are somehow out to get them. And I don't think that's true. Of course, like YouTube has changed a lot, right? The common person can, with just really any camera at all, can make an interesting video that millions and millions and millions of people are willing to see and watch and are willing to go through ads for. Ad companies are willing to pay these YouTubers money because of the enormous audiences that they garner, which is interesting. And that wasn't really a thing unless you were, part of the traditional media industry. And like you said, Amazon or even eBay a while ago, even today, has allowed the common person to flip items for profit. And that has become a viable option as a job, as a career, and as a means to put food on the table. In terms of like how this has affected college degrees or college graduates or society in general, I think that this is just a natural result of our progression in society as a human race, throughout history. We have evolved in a way that has also been brought about in the changes in the way we work. A long time ago, we hunted. And then a while after that, we were gatherers and we farmed. And some people were needed to build homes and build infrastructure. Some people were needed to hunt. Some people needed to farm. And we sort of diverged into different specializations as the needs of society came about, right? But obviously, those aren't the most important roles anymore. We don't really have hunters anymore. We don't really, need everybody in our village, say, to be farming and foraging, for our sustenance. We have other means by which to get the same exact result, if not an exponentially better result than in ancient human history. Builders are still around. That's a fact because we'll probably always need some sort of infrastructure in which to live. But I think technology is just another part of our progression as a race, as a species. Technology is something that came out of our intellect, and our ability to make or realize our imaginations. And when you think about it, the original intent of a lot of technology is to make our lives easier, less mundane, take the mundane things out of our lives and automate them, make them easier, right? And inevitably, this has created new areas new areas in which to tap into for income, right? Like YouTube, Amazon, and software engineering is a very, very relatively new industry as well. So I think that in modern society, like we just happen to be alive in a period where it's a turning point in the kind of specializations that an individual needs in order to be a functioning member of society, right? Like before, a long time ago, it might have been the standard to be a factory worker or an office worker or something else, in the previous century, right? And then now here we are at perhaps the after the turn of an era where technology is the primary means by which we do our work. And the best thing that I think a person can do is just be adaptable. Not only adapt, but be inclined to change and adapt with the times. It's and that's especially important because it appears, to me at least, it appears that the rate at which there is a turning point in the kind of work that we do as a species is shortening, right? Like before, it might have been thousands of years before we changed the way we work. And then later that it's just several hundred years before we change the type of work that we do. And then after that, just a couple hundred years. And then now it's just barely several decades before we all of a sudden drastically change the kind of work and how we do that work in society. So more important than ever, I think it's best and most important to be adaptable.
Right. So obviously, let's be realistic here. Most of our listeners are going to be like high school students who are looking to go to college or people who are already in college. So for people who are already pursuing their degree, who are like listening to this and saying like, dang, it's a little hard to be adaptable, as a college student. What would you suggest to those people? I mean, there's a whole there's a whole gold mine basically of technology out there, lots of money out there to be made from Amazon, from YouTube, from these technology platforms. But how would you suggest that a college student actually pivot so that they can adapt to this new economy? Because it is a little difficult since they've already kind of committed to something that they do want to do that might not be related to technology.
Right. I think before I say, really answer your question, I think it's important to also mention that, like, yes, technology has basically given us a new way to make money. And obviously there's the impression that there's a great deal of money in like technology in general. And while that might be true for now, it's also possible that, technology might not be the hot thing to tap into in the future, right? And also it's important to note that things like YouTube, right? Like I think YouTube is the greatest example of like a job that has come out of technology, or modern day technology and the internet. YouTube is something that is very, 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 very new, at least in the scope of human history.
Yeah, relatively speaking. I mean, it's only been around since what, 2006?
The early 2000s, I would say.
Right, yeah.
And people didn't make money on the platform back then. Actually, I don't even think that was possible back then, that early, in the early stages of YouTube, in the early days of YouTube. Really, people only went onto YouTube to consume content. And if you created content, that was nice. Like, it was a nice thing to do. It was a cool thing to do, just on the side to create content. And then a couple people realized that, hey, this is actually a really, really low cost way, a low cost method by which I can disseminate, say, news or drama or knowledge, different bits and pieces of the traditional media industry that we see, on TV, on traditional television, on the internet. And it so happens that the YouTube provides a convenient platform for our users, or our viewers really, to view the content ad hoc, at will, as needed, right? That's amazing. And it takes a sort of very adaptable person, very forward-thinking person to think, oh, I see this platform. It's made viewing these sort of videos easier than traditional TV. It solved a lot of problems that traditional TV had. Hey, maybe I can actually make some money off of this. Now, I'm sure that's actually not how that started, but that's something that you can think about. When YouTube started allowing ads to be played on their videos, on the videos that are hosted on their platform, it started to become a sort of hotbed for advertising companies to sort of take advantage of the enormous and growing audience that YouTube itself as a whole was garnering. And then at that point, it became possible to make money off of YouTube. But nobody ever goes to college thinking, oh, I'm going to be a YouTuber back in the early 2000s. That was not a thing, right? So my point is that it takes some thought, it takes some insight, and it takes somebody who is able to see some trends, see some patterns that might be advantageous to them. But on the flip side, if you really think about it, if you truly think about it, a lot of very big YouTubers today came to be by accident, right? I think my favorite example is like Shane Dawson on YouTube. Some of you might know him. He's a character. He's pretty funny, I would say. And he is considered like one of the OG YouTubers, like the very, very, very original YouTubers that started in the early 2000s, right? He never intended to get this big as he is today. Like, he's got like I think last time I checked, like 13 or 14 million subscribers. He never intended to get that big. He never intended to garner that level of fame, and he never intended to make money off of his videos. He just did it really for fun, right? He was a funny person, and recording that and sharing it with the world was just something that he liked to do, that he enjoyed doing. And then he ended up being able to turn it into a career. And so in some cases, that career was sort of out of luck and chance and just doing what he likes, right? So sometimes these new industries come about and you're just lucky and you just happen to be in the right place at the right time. Now, aside from that, there are other YouTubers who notice that you can actually make a good deal of money on this platform and then have gone into that, right? Have jumped in on the bandwagon and started YouTube channels, and now they're doing really well too. So it just takes some thought. It takes some detail-oriented people to see that that's happening, and maybe you can take advantage of that too. Now, for college students specifically, you've decided to take what most people would say the more the safer route, right? The more secure route is that, the previous generation always says, like, go to school, get a degree, and you get a good job, and you get to stay at that job, and your job security was the gold standard, right? Like, do you agree, David?
Yeah, I mean, especially, I think I don't want to say a specific time period, but I'm guessing around the 60s was when like white collar jobs really started like emerging, and people were staying at those jobs for, decades, and that was the dream, most definitely the American dream in back in the day.
Right. Now, there's nothing wrong with that sort of sentiment, but the reality is that it's actually pretty unlikely for an individual to stay at the same company for as long as the previous generation did today. Even in the traditional companies, it's pretty, it's not as common as it was before. Another thing is that, it's people say that it's the safe route, right? And to some degree, that's true. But we just said earlier that there are some jobs that were taken away, or that were sort of out of popularity because of technology. And so the worry is that, oh, since I'm in college, should I be worried that my degree won't help me? And I'm going to say that might be tempting to think. And to some degree, you're also right to think that a college degree won't mean 100% certainty you're going to be safe from poverty or from struggle, right? So it's become the case today that a college degree is somewhat standard. I know there are companies out there today that have moved away from the requirement of having a college degree. Namely, I think Google no longer requires that you have a college degree, and I think Apple doesn't require a college degree in order to apply to jobs at those companies.
I think it's a lot of the bigger tech companies, that have realized this.
Right, but let me pose this question to you, David, and let's see what you think here. What about sorry, let's pose this question. Do you think that a person who has a college degree applying to the same job as the person that doesn't have a college degree, say at Google or at Apple, do you think those two individuals have the same odds of getting in, or the same sort of chance of getting in?
I would say definitely not. The person with a degree almost always has the advantage, unless the person without the degree did some serious like independent projects or did something on their own that was incredibly insane. But I mean, yeah, a degree that shows 4 years of effort of learning, computer science theory, of spending that time in college. And no matter what, I think that's going to appeal much more to employers. And obviously, assuming that the two people have like about the same amount of experience, I'd say that the person with the degree wins every time.
So why do you say that? Like tell me why you think that.
I mean, I think it's less about skills and more about commitment, because I think the degree shows your employer that you are actually committed towards the field you want to work in, and that I guess at this you do have somewhat of a passion or a knack for it, because I don't think you would go for that 4-year degree. We spend 4 years in college if you weren't at least somewhat interested or passionate about computer science. And that's how I view it.
I think you hit the nail on that. It shows that you're willing to go through something at least somewhat long term. 4
Right.
years, relatively speaking, throughout your entire life isn't a lot of time. Let's be honest. And then if you decide to do what I did and you get out early, then that's like less, more so the case that it's not really a great deal of time. But the reality is that it serves to demonstrate that you can commit to something, that you have chosen something and you've stuck with it. And the degree really is just proof that you have stuck with something. And I think it's also important to note that at this stage, it doesn't really matter really what degree you have. I would say it's more the case that it's just a demonstration that you're able to commit to something.
Right, most definitely. I don't think this is why like we always discourage people from getting a degree and then basically not doing anything else outside of that, because your employer is going to be looking for skills. And let's be honest here, a degree doesn't really demonstrate skills. You might learn some things in your classes that you can apply to your job, but the vast majority of what you're going to learn is going to be A, on the job, or B, through clubs or through outside experiences, through independent projects, stuff that you pursue on your own because you are actually passionate about that. So obviously it's important to have skills in addition to your degree. You need to really have both in order to secure a job, because one shows commitment and then one obviously shows that you can do the job.
Yep. My company, during my training and even today, they said they like to say that they have a 10-20-70 rule, and that is 10% of learning a skill or just learning in general is reading from a book, and then 20% of learning is through being taught it. Like there's somebody in the front teaching you how to do something, lecture or classes, right? And then the 70% of learning a new skill or learning in general is actually doing it, is actually applying what you're learning, or just learning on the fly on the job is 70% of learning. Now I don't know to what degree that is true, but I'd say from personal experience, this is pretty true. I mean, in my background, so my background is in computer science, right? So I'm a programmer, really. Let's be honest. I'm a programmer. I'm a software engineer. I code. I stare at a screen all day, right? And so for me, learning a new language, say, or learning a new technology, learning a new framework, I can spend hours upon hours reading a book. I can spend hours on hours going to classes and spend the requisite amount of time, watching YouTube tutorials and stuff, or taking an online course on new technologies, new languages, new frameworks, right? But I don't actually get much out of any of those activities unless I actually do something on my own outside of those activities in the form of like personal projects, or just like quick, I actually just like, I learned this new feature about a programming language that I used, and then go into my editor and then actually write out like a line of code, trial and error on my own outside of the book, outside of the courses that I take. And in those moments, I learn the most. In those moments, I acquire the most out of the time that I put in.
Right, most definitely. I mean, I have to definitely agree with that. Obviously, I'm only a first year student so far. I haven't really learned much, but from what I can tell you, just like from high school and just from the few classes that I've attended so far, you can add up you can solve however many math problems you want. You can do Ohm's law all day. You can apply Kirchhoff's law, but it really doesn't matter until you actually get your hands on a circuit that you will learn electrical engineering. It's not until you actually build something. It's not until you actually for in your case, program, that you become a software engineer, because it's about the application of those skills more than learning about the theory or learning about how everything works. It's about doing it yourself and then applying it to solve a real life problem, I guess. And that's what gives you the skills that you need.
Yep. I just wanted to say that what we just said supports the argument that you don't need a college degree. Because realistically speaking, if you were to get your hands on, a book on programming, for example, just as an example, if you were to get like a programming book on Python or Java, or alternatively, you sign up for an online course on Python or Java, and then you yourself develop some projects using those languages that you learned, then you've acquired essentially the same skills as a person who went to college to accomplish the same thing, right? So that's just an argument in favor of people who say that college degrees aren't such a hard requirement anymore. So there's that side, right? Of course, you can totally learn computer science, software engineering, computer programming on your own. And it might even be more time effective to learn it by doing. And that's true. You can do that. But on the flip side, we also said earlier that the degree is more of a demonstration of commitment, a demonstration of true passion, right?
Yeah, so obviously it's important to make a distinction here between a degree and your college experience per se. So obviously, your degree is, finishing all your credits, doing what you need to, passing all your classes, obviously, and then you get that degree. But there's something completely different. That's something completely different than what you actually experience as a whole in college, because college isn't just about classes and getting your degree. It is about other things as well, making connections. It's about getting the opportunities that your college offers to you, and then using that so that you can gain skills. And college is more. If you think college is just the quote unquote education alone, then you're very mistaken, because you need much more than just a degree in order to get a job, or even, I'd say, contribute to the market in general. Because let's be real here, I don't think a college degree alone will help you solve the problems of the economy, and that's really what makes you money, right? Solving other people's problems. Like Julian said earlier, YouTube makes a lot of money because it solves a huge problem, right? The problem was that traditional advertising per se was not really effective. Billboards and TVs and all this stuff, like they would sometimes work, like let's say during the Super Bowl or whatever, but YouTube is so much more effective, because then you can target your audience, and it's a lot easier for people to get attracted to the ads, since it's not just general ads, right? Because television channels basically run general ads, and they have no idea who they're targeting, right? They could just target all sorts of people, and many of the people won't be interested in it. But Facebook or YouTube can develop algorithms, and that helps a lot in helping advertisers target people, and it helps people, I guess, find stuff that they are interested in, if you want to say that as well. But YouTube, Facebook, and all these other social media platforms solve that big problem of not being able to target when you're advertising. Similarly, Amazon solved the problem of basically having to run to a store every time, and perhaps an item that you want is out of stock, right? Amazon is pretty good, I'd say, at offering a large variety of sellers that you can buy from. So you will almost always get your item, and you don't even have to go out to get it. You'll just get it delivered to you within a few days. And so the important thing to note here is that if you want to, let's say, make money, and if you want to have a quote unquote stable career, it is important that you are able to solve problems, and that's basically how you dig, I guess, the gold mine of these new technologies.
Yeah. I'd like to mention, I know you didn't plan on talking about this, but you're familiar with the freelancing economy, right?
Yes,
like the
yes,
gig,
I am.
the gig
Yes, I am.
economy.
Yep.
Right. So the reason why freelancers, especially today, are doing so well is because they're marketing, they're selling their skills. They're very, very specialized skills, right? I think for today, for now, but I think for forever really, is human skills, the skills that you learn that may be hard for others to acquire, is valuable. And a lot of people would rather pay somebody else for their skills and for their services rather than learn it themselves, because it takes a great deal of time and effort to acquire and learn a new skill. So sometimes if you have the money, then maybe it's more effective to pay somebody with those skills to do the work that you'd like to get done. And for people who have specialized skills, that's a big plus. That is an extremely positive boon for you and for your efforts in learning that skill. The college degree, aside from being a demonstration of commitment, I think is also a demonstration of your ability to learn, right? Your ability to learn quickly. I know that for a lot of students, school may be too fast, right? Like the professor goes too quickly, or the class goes by too quickly. You know, the course content, there's just so much content and not enough time to learn them. This is true for a lot of students, right? And for some students, it comes very easily. And then there are some students in the middle. What's important is that a student learns how to learn new skills, new topics very quickly, right? You know, the students in the semester system perhaps have it a little easier. The students on a quarter system where they're taking like 3 sets of courses every single academic year have it a little harder, where they have to crunch and shove a great deal of course material into such a small amount of time. But what you get out of it is refining your ability to learn quickly, refining your ability to learn on the fly, and by the time you receive your degree, you've essentially proven that you're able to learn and acquire new skills. That, I think, is the ultimate point.
Right, most definitely. I'm going to move on to I guess, a different topic now. Obviously, you know, you're majoring in computer science and I'm majoring in electrical engineering. And I mean, would you agree with me to say that our degrees are, you know, quite future-proof since they're more technology-oriented?
So I want to say yes, but I also want to say no, because as much as I would like to say that I know the future, I don't. The reality is that I don't. You know, what if tomorrow a global EMP event happens and then all technology is like gone? You know, then that's my job out the window, right? Or both of our jobs out the window, right? Like I have no idea what happens in the future. But the point is that computer science gives us foundational knowledge, and it teaches us some skills which are nice. But in my line of work in software engineering, technologies change like every month. I mean, really, they do change very, very frequently. And for electrical engineering, I'm sure that's true as well. But in programming and software engineering, like, you know, every single week, even, I'm hearing about updates to this programming language and updates to that programming language. And then like a couple of months later, there's like a brand new hot and popular framework for writing a mobile application like Flutter, say, or a new library for doing machine learning and another library for building websites and all that stuff. Those new technologies come out so frequently, so frequently, and it doesn't make sense for like everybody to like learn all of those skills all at once, because you're never going to finish, right? But also another thing is that companies that want to produce a software application, to sell or to just develop something for people to use, they have to stick to one technology, or at least one set of technologies, right? They can't possibly just conform to every single new technology that comes out, because you're just going to be redoing your work all the time, constantly, right? So to some degree, at some point, you have to stick to something. And after that, maybe down the line, when you either change jobs or your company decides to change technologies, then all the engineers are essentially forced to learn new things. In my line of work, in software engineering, I have to be nimble in the technologies that I know. I have to place less emphasis on the technologies and the tools that I know and more emphasis on my ability to acquire new technologies and tools. A year ago, Flutter didn't exist. Flutter is, by the way, for the engineers out there, is a mobile application development framework. It's a software development kit for developing cross-platform mobile applications. It's really awesome, and that's what we're using for Uniplan. We've chosen that as our technology for developing the Uniplan app. But that technology didn't exist, at least in the public eye, a year ago. It actually came out of beta very recently. It came out of beta last December in 2018. And before that, like there was, it started out with HTML and then CSS, and then there was JavaScript, and then JavaScript alone has like so many libraries and so many frameworks that just have to do with JavaScript. And there's no way that you can just pick one and then stick with it for the rest of your life, because technology's changed. So we have to evolve, we have to adapt to new technologies pretty frequently. It's not possible, maybe down the line, it's not possible for Uniplan to just remain with Flutter. We will inevitably have to use some new technology. And for us to be able to make that change, we need to be really good. We need to be really good at adapting. And so in my job, really my job is solving other people's problems, but also my job is to never stop learning, to never stop acquiring new skills. What do you think about that?
Right. I mean, I definitely agree with that. My electrical engineering professor was actually talking about this the other day, and he said electrical engineering is very, very different than what it was, 90, 80, 50, even 40, even like 10 years ago, I would say, because of Moore's Law, if you guys have ever heard of that. That means that I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, I think it's on a chip, the number of transistors that we can fit will double every few years. Mm-hmm. I'm not exactly sure about the number, but essentially the important thing to note here is that technology is exponentially, is growing exponentially fast. Yep. So this causes a lot of new technologies to arise among electrical engineers. So, I mean, electrical engineer 90 years ago would probably be solving circuits and be working on just basic electronic stuff, because back in the day, there really was no digital appliances. There were no laptops, there were no computers, or perhaps there were computers, but they were very, very slow, very, how shall I say, useless.
Very large.
Yeah, very large. And I mean, they would use, our smartphones today could have run the entire moon program, which is pretty insane if you think about it, because that's how powerful our phones are now. And my professor said that most electrical engineers today don't even really touch circuits. They understand what circuits are, and I think that's important because they understand the theory of electricity, the theories behind electrical engineering. But everything they do now is actually information processing, because what electricity is used for now is to store data, right? Store ones and zeros, and those ones and zeros make up your photos, make up any emails you send, make up everything. And so it's actually kind of merged, I would say, with computer science, computer engineering, something along those lines, into more information theory and less electronics and more uses for those electronics. It's a much different field than it was just not even that long ago, really. And so, yeah, I definitely agree with you in saying that, even an electrical engineering degree, which is relatively, which is quite relevant to today's technologies, you still really need to adapt, because if you get a degree and you work for a few years, next thing you know, your technologies might be completely different than what they were a few years ago. and you're going to have to adapt to that. So, I mean, even in STEM fields, it's really difficult to stay in the same exact job doing the same exact thing for an extended period of time, because there are always changes, like you said, with computer science, with electrical engineering, with everything that we do. And yeah. So now let's talk about some non-STEM oriented degrees, since we went over our degrees, which are kind of STEM based. So obviously, some people make the argument that STEM degrees are the best, and if you major in a non-STEM field, you're not going to have any relevant skills today, and you won't be able to make money in the marketplace. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that belief, first of all, and then we'll get into discussing whether or not those degrees are actually future-proof.
I don't agree with that at all. Actually, I mean, seriously, it frustrates me a lot when I hear people say, you need to go into engineering, you need to go into medicine, you need to go to XYZ tech company because there's a lot of money in it. And like, yeah, money is important in our ordinary daily life to a certain degree, but it cannot be the basis upon which you make your decision that will greatly, drastically affect your life and your happiness, right? You have to, technology in particular, I'm going to be honest, it's kind of boring, at least at the low level, you know? I mean, like, okay, it's fascinating, at least to me, how all of our technology just happens to work. Like, I'm sure, you know, the lower level you go in terms of a computer, the less I will actually know what's going on. And I think that's all really interesting. But when you look at it from a high level, it's kind of boring. It really, all it is just electrical signals going from here to there. But, you know, you step away from a little bit and all of a sudden you have an SSD, or all of a sudden you have a processor that is making billions of calculations per second. And my point is that you need to have a love for the subject matter, because that helps you get through the honestly grueling work needed to earn the degree or to even earn the skills. You know, like, it's hard to learn, even for me, who has a computer science degree, to learn new technologies, because new technologies means possibly it can mean new ways of thinking. Like, for example, when, let's say in terms of building a website, right? Like, there's HTML, there's CSS, right? Which really aren't programming languages. They're markup languages that make things look pretty on a website, right? So let's take those traditional, like, just HTML, CSS builders, developers, engineers that worked, say, in the 90s, right? Where it's basically just HTML and CSS. Those websites were really simple. And then new technologies come out. Like, in the early 2000s, now, even today, there's JavaScript libraries, and there are CSS frameworks like Bootstrap and all that stuff. You need to learn those skills. And for me, even for me, learning those skills is hard. So you need to have a love for the subject matter, because it just makes it easier to sort of think about the future and, like, what you want, and focus on that, so that it's just easier to learn. Whereas if you really don't like it, going through the motions of learning new skills in that area is very grueling and very hard. So if that's how you feel right now and you're just not happy, then let's take a person from the other side. Let's take somebody from the humanity side, or the more face-to-face kind of a person, right? If you're the kind of person who likes to talk to people then maybe business is for you, or maybe education is for you, where you're interacting with people on a daily basis, new people on a daily basis. That might be more for you. And there are skills in those areas where I greatly struggle. Like, I can't sell for my life. I'm not a salesman. I'm going to be honest. Like, I can't sell. Like, yeah, I manage the Uniplan team, and my goal is to get as many people to use our app that we're producing as possible. But I'm not a salesman. I don't have a sales background. And so there are skills even on that side that I perhaps need to acquire, but are difficult for me to acquire. And for other people, it might be very, very easy to acquire, right? What do you think?
I mean, I definitely think, I definitely agree with you that you do need to pick something that you are passionate about, because yeah, fields do evolve, and that's just something that's going to happen to everybody, no matter what you really do. So yeah, I would suggest going into something that you definitely like to do, because then at least you can get through the degree, and at least you can make something of that, rather than being stuck with a degree that you worked really hard for and you don't even like, and then you have to learn the degree, you have to learn the new technologies, and you kind of run into a wall where you're like, wow, like I thought I was done with a degree. I thought I was going to get a steady job now, and it turns out I'm just going to have to learn more of this, and I hate this. And it just becomes this, I guess, perpetual cycle, and it's really never ending. And so if that's what you want to do for the rest of your life, that's your choice. But yeah, that sounds really sad to me. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I think, again, to hark back to earlier points, it's all about skills, right? Like, yes, in engineering, in technology, in science, all those areas, skills, they're more highlighted in today because we just happen to run in a really technology forward, technology focused society. But there are a great deal of people involved in marketing those technologies and putting it in front of the faces of customers, or putting it in front of your faces, right? So that you know about it, right? Facebook wasn't a marvel on its own, just from a technology standpoint. Like, yes, it was a very new technology a while ago, but it took a different kind of person to market it, to realize that, hey, this can grow and everybody can use it. And that goes for Snapchat, YouTube, Instagram, all these new platforms that are coming out. It takes a different kind of person to sort of market that and to draw up the design, for example, which isn't engineering related. Design and art and all of those areas complement a software product like Snapchat and all those new apps and startups today. But they are so important because they are customer facing, they are people facing. Engineering, as much as I'd like to say like, oh, like I love meeting new people, engineering is I need to do that in the comfort of my own office, in the comfort of my own desk, at my own computer. And I can't be talking to customers other than getting, what kind of features do you want? Because otherwise I'm not spending any time actually building features, right? I need to do that on my own, or at least with another engineer or something. And then there are other people who need to be customer facing. They need to be out there. They need to design, and they need to make things that are visually appealing so that everybody likes it and everybody wants to use the engineering product that I just made, right? So there are so many areas that have nothing to do with engineering and have nothing to do with science. Technology is a little hard because today it's all about technology, right? But tomorrow that might not be the case. And so again, just to reiterate, skills are important, but what's more important is being able to acquire new skills. And so in that respect, degrees don't matter. Your diplomas don't matter. Your specializations don't really matter. Like, yeah, I just happen, or both of us, David and I, seem to be advantaged by today's society, but in the future, that might not be the case. And we will have to adapt if we want to survive. We will have to adapt in order to maintain our standard of living. And that takes some learning. It takes some time to be able to acquire new skills, but we have to do it in order to stay afloat.
Right, most definitely. And I just want to kind of comment on the point you made about how Facebook isn't really a technology marvel, and how it's more of a kind of blend of design and art into a technology platform. I definitely really agree with that. I mean, actually, if you think about it, people don't think that the iPhone is impressive, but it really is actually. I learned about it in my electrical engineering class, and the power that the iPhone has is actually pretty crazy. I think this applies to all smartphones, obviously, but I think what's more important than the actual technology features, like all the transistors you can fit onto the iPhone or the processing power, is the actual iPhone itself, right? The interface and the Apple ecosystem, the way everything works together. That's what makes the iPhone great, because it's all sold in this one package, right? And there are people besides engineers that are working on this, right? There are people who are working on how the iPhone is actually designed so that it fits comfortably in your hand, it fits in your pocket while still having all the features that you want it to have. There are people out there, obviously, Tim Cook, all the Apple executives who are working every day to make sure that they're actually able to sell iPhones, right? So there's a lot more to technology companies. There's a lot more involved in technology companies than just engineering or STEM. There is quite a lot. There are quite a lot of careers that you can take that kind of involve technology that I would say don't even require a STEM degree. So, I mean, I think a pretty good example of this, like we mentioned earlier, is YouTube, because I know on YouTube there are a lot of people who do things that are not. There are a lot of people on YouTube that do things such as, you know, painting, such as cooking, those kinds of things that are leveraging essentially a technology platform, but in and of themselves don't actually require any technology background, right? And that goes back to the point that you were making earlier. Be adaptable, right? Even if you are only good at cooking, you have to find a way to make that actually work. So what you do is you can go on YouTube and then start a cooking channel, and then people might actually look at your videos. You can do the same on Facebook. And I'm sure you can do probably the same on Instagram. And it's just a matter of how you are able to take your skills and apply them to the technologies of today in order to make money, in order to have yourself a career, basically. So I guess to finish off this little podcast, I guess we're going to talk about things to do no matter your degree that will make you and your career future proof, essentially.
So, I mean, I'm starting to sound like a broken record here, but skills, and being able to learn new skills.
Right, most definitely. I would have to agree with you, and my advice would just be leverage. Right, I sound like kind of a businessman there, but really, leveraging these platforms, leveraging these new technologies, in order to put yourself out there, in order to market yourself and your skills, in order to, you know, maybe entertain others, who knows, using social media platforms, right? Because I think technology has opened up more possibilities, and it's so much easier for people to do things now that didn't exist 20, 30 years ago. And it's definitely very easy for people to leverage technologies nowadays to their advantage, to do something that they love while being able to contribute to the market and be able to solve problems, essentially. I guess that's what I've been talking about this entire podcast. But anything else you want to say, Julian?
Yeah, I want to also say that the reason why people are so frustrated with losing their jobs, or like losing an industry, or having a certain sort of I guess a certain career go out of style, for lack of a better word. I think the reason why those people are extremely frustrated that this sort of thing happens is because of a lack of ability to adapt and change. If they were to pivot to something else or use the skills that they learned in another way, maybe not in the way that was traditionally done before, but in a different way, no matter what that way is, it might help them. It might prove profitable. It might prove to make them happy. Being adaptable, being able to change, and being able to, like you said, leverage what is out there for you, for yourself, to be happy, to turn into a career possibly, is really all you need. It's all about learning how to change, learning that change is the only constant, right? That you need to sort of go with the times. You can't just stop, because if you stop, if you plateau, and this is starting to get really personal for me because I hate feeling like I'm stuck or I have plateaued. To plateau means that you've peaked, and the only way to go is down. And when you've stopped learning, when you've stopped acquiring new skills, you put yourself at a great danger of becoming obsolete, right? Like, I will grow older, but I don't wish to be obsolete. To for those Terminator references or Terminator freaks out there, I will get older. That's just part of life. But I don't want to be obsolete. I don't want to peak. I don't want to plateau. I always want to feel as though I'm growing in some way. Perhaps, it's not all about technology, as much as, my background says I'm all about technology. Growth isn't all about technology for me. Growth is my relationships. Growth is, yes, my career in technology. Growth is also in terms of my mental state, my mind, right? I always want to read. I always want to learn new things, like not technology. I learn a great deal that's not technology, and it's great because I feel like I've grown. And as long as you feel like you're growing, as long as you feel like you're making progress and you're not stuck, you're not plateaued, I think you're on the right track.
Right. All right. That will be it, I guess, for today's podcast. Do remember that this podcast is made possible by the Uniplan team, and we are currently in the process of developing an app called Uniplan that is basically an all-in-one organizer for college students, and also make sure to support us on social media. We are usually under the tag at Uniplan team. Julian, do you have anything else to say before we end this podcast?
Yeah, so if you would like to be directly involved with our app, like if you want to suggest new things for us to build or for us to improve, you think that something that we've done is horribly, terribly wrong, please let us know. And please sign up to become a beta tester for Uniplan, because we're rolling that out soon. And how you'll do that is at uniplanteam.com. Uni as in university, uniplanteam.com. And that's where you'll be able to sign up to become a beta tester. Any comments and suggestions on our app are taken extremely seriously, and we will work doubly as hard to make sure that your recommendations are heard. And then you'll at least be able to say that you had a direct impact on the app. Your suggestions might go a long way into helping your peers, fellow students, be able to organize their lives better. And I think that's huge. That's my personal passion for me, is helping students succeed, right? We all want students to succeed so that we can learn, focus on learning, focus on acquiring new skills. And so again, if you'd like to be directly involved with helping us help you and help other students, sign up to become a beta tester at uniplanteam.com. Also, if you would like to support the podcast, one of the best ways of doing so is leaving a review for us on iTunes and also wherever you get your podcasts. And also, just spread the word.
All right, and that will be it for this episode of the Study Space podcast. Make sure to tune in next time to our next episode in order to get more great free information about college and about your career. Bye.